Well, oh, that works good. Well, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you again. It's been a minute since I've been here. I had a battle between my right knee and my left hip to see which one gets replaced first, and the hip one. And the knee's gotten better because the hip is somewhat better, so that's a nice thing. But for a while, I couldn't walk far enough to get in here, and then after a while, I got it replaced, and I still couldn't walk far enough to get in here, but it's all good now. So, hi again. I miss you guys. I wanted to talk today a little bit about one of the things that's nearest and dearest to my Dharma heart, my path, what's helped me the most. And I might not finish today. Good news is I also am doing the Dharma talk next week. So this may be a 2-week presentation because I want to leave plenty of space for you to think about it, ask questions if you have them, because this is sort of in the realm, there's some conceptual stuff, there always is, but it's also more in the realm, I think, of practical advice in terms of how to use Vajrayana practices. So I titled the thing As You Like It. I don't know why. I think Shakespeare has always been fascinating to me. That particular play it's a romantic comedy drama kind of play of his, not a tragedy. And I kind of like that. And the main thing it involves is somebody pretending to be somebody else, and then it all working out in the end, even better than anybody could imagine. Lovely bit of Shakespeare. And this, in Vajrayana practice, as you probably know by now, we've got all these very interesting kind of beings that we include in our practice. And one of the keys to this was that in early Buddhism, what the Buddha taught was, okay, first we got to quiet our mind. It's like crazy. And it's driving us this crazy way and that crazy way, right? And if we can quiet it down, then we can get some insight into who we actually are, which is not who we think we are. What he said was, you already are what you seek. You already are a Buddha. It's obscured. You don't know it yet. And for, I don't know, almost 1,000 years, monks worked with that, followers of the Buddha worked with that, and whatever thought would come up, they would just drop it and relax into the space, right? But that didn't mean that people's imagination stopped working or their curiosity stopped happening. And most people, because most people aren't monks, have a life where all kinds of things appear during the day, right? And so some brilliant Buddhist siddha, possibly even a Hindu siddha, because they were all together there in northern India and sharing information. Even though they argued about philosophical things, the nuts and bolts of being human are the same. I mean, you can be a Jewish human or a Catholic human or a Muslim human or a Buddhist human. And we may argue about what our concept of life is, but ultimately we all have very similar things like five senses plus consciousness, et cetera, and we have to work with that. So these geniuses, they came up with, rather than dropping all these things that are naturally arising in the human consciousness, why don't we work with them? And that was brilliant. And that's what the pujas or the sadhanas that we do are all about. They're all about using our imagination rather than dropping it, using our curiosity in order to pull us deeper into insight instead of dropping it, okay? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And it turns out that the framework for these practices, to me, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say this before. I don't think so. I hate not to give attribution to people who turn me on to good ideas, but I think I might have had this one. These things are structured like great symphonic music. There's an overture, and that overture leads us naturally into the first movement, just the way a great symphony's overture introduces and leads you, prepares you for what comes next. Even though if you've never heard the symphony before, you don't know what comes next, but it's like you're open to it, and then you can experience it. And then that movement opens you further to something even a little more, a little deeper. And there's a second movement, sometimes a third movement, and then a finale, right? Where it all comes together and you leave with this very whole experience of your mind different than what your ordinary discursive experience of your mind is. Well, you couldn't have that experience if you weren't already there, if you couldn't already hear music, right? You couldn't experience a flash of insight into who you really are. In other words, your own Buddha nature, unless it was already there. The issue is how do we open the doors in consciousness and walk through the path to get to the place where we directly experience it? Because the concept of it, while it's helpful and certainly worth studying, I'm not one of those guys who says, don't study, study. This is study and contemplation is extremely important because they inform this process, just like the symphony. If you know a little bit about the symphony that you're going to hear, it's a much richer experience than just going and plopping yourself down. Going and plopping yourself down is fine, and you will have a great experience, but it's even better if you read the liner notes, you know? It's like, oh, that's what's going on. It's good. So this talk is about that. Now I want to start with the overture here. And the overture is whatever predicament we're in now. There are a lot of ways to summarize that predicament. The most compact one that I know of, and I think for me at least, the best that I know of, is what we call the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. Are people familiar with that? We teach those downstairs in the beginning of Buddhist practice or beginning of the day talk. And because it literally is the regular, ordinary, preliminary to Dharma practice, it opens the first door. It's kind of like you're walking down the street and there's a door with a street number on it. And you decide you want to go in there and you knock on the door and the door opens. The key to that door opening is these four thoughts. Or you may modify them. Could be something like them. I haven't found anything better myself, so we'll just use those. And the first one is that you have a precious life. It's unique. Even though you have Buddha nature and I have Buddha nature is expressing itself very differently through you and through me. And that's a beautiful thing. Okay. In fact, you could say that about just the universe, about life energy. Each individual being is like a wave in the ocean. It's all ocean, but it's its own unique individual thing. So, and it only has a certain amount of life, and because it's unique and the light only hits that wave in a particular way, it's precious and limited and will go away. We all, have a use-by date, as it were, or an expiration date. So life's precious and is rare. It's not easy to get a human life. If you think about all the living things on the planet, let alone all the planets, if there's life out there in the universe, who knows? Humans, while there are 7 billion of us or something, that's nothing compared to the number of moths that are in the world, or even the number of different kinds of moths or beetles or worms. Or being human is really kind of unique. And so appreciating the fact that we have consciousness and we have these 5 senses, as faulty as they are, and as limited as they are and we are, still, it's a unique set of qualities. And so the first part of the key is appreciating that. The second part of the key is appreciating the fact that we have an expiration date, that life is fragile. In the text, the formal text, it says, fragile as a water bubble. And you think about it, and it is. None of us know how much time we have left. And so, obviously the message is, don't waste your time. And the third thing is that cause and effect is the rule of the universe we're in. So what we think, do, and say matters. That's karma. What we think, do, and say matters. And then you think to yourself, this is where curiosity kicks in. It's like, okay, so what? Yeah, I know that. Well, it turns out that the fourth thought is that samsara is unsatisfactory. It's insufficient. Even when we get what we want, we're not happy with it for long. And a lot of times we get what we don't want and we get delusion. This is where illusion comes in. And we wind up thinking that if we do everything just right, life will give us a pat on the head, praise us a little bit, and we'll get good outcomes because we did everything just right. I don't know about you. How many times have all of you guys done everything right, or at least as far as you know, and had bad outcomes? Yeah, happens all the time. It's like, we never question it. We're always driven to try to get what we want and avoid what we don't want, and we think we know what we're doing, and we don't. We don't. So that's the predicament. That's the overture. If you really take that in deeply, you want refuge. It's like, holy moly, I need some refuge from this. This is confusing and difficult to deal with, and while I believe that it's workable, I've been told that it's workable, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And so, it's a natural thing. This is where the door opens from the overture, which is the predicament, to the first act, or the first movement. And the first movement we call refuge and bodhicitta. We'll chant that together now. I wanted to give you the whole preamble in real time, you know. So refuge, we chant it 3 times. And there's a real richness to that, even though we do it habitually, kind of, which is no problem. It's always a good thing. And we do it rote, and that's no problem. It's always a good thing, but it's really a lot richer if you read the liner notes. And the liner notes will tell you we're taking refuge in the Buddha. Well, the Buddha exists in all directions and times. It actually, Buddha, awakened mind, exists in every cell in your body, every place where there's life energy. So you've got a gajillion Buddhas within you. And there are a gajillion Buddhas all around you. And the thing about Buddhas is they become Buddhas because compassion. I mean, that's, we're told over and over again that enlightenment is the union of compassion and insight, right? Well, if they're compassionate towards us and we're feeling other than Buddha, and I want to tell you, even if intellectually you think you're Buddha, it's like you probably don't feel that way. I mean, that's where I'm at. So on a feeling level, we've got this sense of relief that comes from thinking there are a gajillion enlightened beings out there, and they're all pulling for us. They all want to help us. That's what they do. They all want to remove our suffering. That's what they do. And refuge is, first thing, taking refuge in Buddha, right? And we're just calling on them and saying, help. And we do it the first time because we're unenlightened beings, dualistic thinking, you know, there's me and there's Buddha over there, and there's me and there's you over there, right? Okay, so I don't see the one. I may believe in it, but my feeling is I'm still a separate thing. So we call on the Buddhas outside ourselves the first time. We call on the teachings of the Buddha that actually are the liner notes. They tell us how to walk this path. And we take refuge in that, say, okay, what I've been trying so far isn't working so well, and this worked really well for Buddha, maybe it'll work for me too. He says it will, or she says it will. And so we take refuge in the teachings in the Dharma. And then lastly, taking refuge in the Sangha. Well, guess what? Once you're a follower of the Buddha and you engender compassion, even if you're not completely enlightened yet, you really want to help. And Sangha goes on many levels. From all of us in here are Sangha. And one of the requirements for Vajrayana practice is that we understand we're here to help each other. That by being here, we're helping each other. We're supporting this place where we can be introduced to Buddha and Dharma. So volunteering, donating, doing whatever you can, just showing up is a huge thing. It's being Sangha, one of the 3 jewels. Before he passed away, Thich Nhat Hanh said, you know, there's this cosmology that says, okay, Shakyamuni was, I can't remember, the 3rd Buddha of the era or something of 100 Buddhas, or maybe, can't remember. And there will be 100 of them, so there's going to be more Buddhas. Thich Nhat Hanh said the next Buddha is going to be the Sangha. Is the enlightened community is going to be the Buddha for the world. Think about that. So we're taking refuge in the idea of community, that we're all connected together. this day and age, in the world we live in, the climate we live in, with so much enmity everywhere, the idea that community could be refuge is a real refuge. So this is part of precious human life, that we can form this kind of thing. So the second time through, we're doing the same thing. I won't re-elaborate everything, but that's also true within you at the cellular level, and even deeper than that. And at the higher Vajrayana practices, there are actually visualizations in some of the practices where you imagine different Buddhas residing in different places in your body and different energy centers with different flows of energy through you and all that. It gets elaborate. But the point is to understand that creating the link between what we perceive as the Buddhas outside and the Buddhas within us is really an important part of the practice, and that's why we do it a second time, as we're like acknowledging that reality. And the third time is just resting in the beauty of that image. It's like letting your imagination just run with that. Buddhas everywhere, and resting in their presence. That's the third repetition. Okay, so let's do the refuge prayer together. Let's chant it one time in Tibetan and say it twice in English. Sunje chudong suki chognama Changchu pardu dakni kyab suchi Dagi jinso gipe sonam ki Drola penshir sanje ruparsho. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So the next part is bodhicitta. And the most common formulation for that goes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni 2,600 years ago. He called it the 4 perfect abodes, 4 perfect places to live in. It's good to know that. Why? Well, now that we've said the refuge prayer and contemplated the liner notes, so to speak, can you feel the openness of that? Okay, I want you to feel openness, so here's what I want you to do. And this is also a good thing to do at the beginning of practice, so here we go. Put your right hand in your left armpit and your left hand over your shoulder and give yourself a hug. Just like that. And take a deep breath in, about count of 4. Hold it for a count of 3 or 4, don't strain, and let it go. And do that again while you're giving yourself a hug. And one more time. Now, just let your hands drop, and you'll notice that your mind is like a little calmer, a little more open. It's clear. clear. And I want you to say one word to yourself. Just say yes. Just say yes. And feel that. You feel it's kind of warm and open, relaxed. Now, say no. Say no with some emphasis. Mean it. And feel that. Can you feel the contraction? Just feel the contraction of that. It's how powerful our language is and how powerful our minds are. So with the open space of having prayed, contemplated refuge, you want to fill that space with something, right? And the Buddha's recommendation is that we engender some qualities. And the qualities that he recommended we engender are kindness, compassion, joy, and peace, or we call it equanimity sometimes, big word. But what it really means is that you're at peace with what is. You're living in a world of yes. You're not preferring this thing over that thing, holding some things close and clinging to them or pushing other things away. You're just looking at life and realizing the preciousness of it. It's like it's circling back and taking that again, recognizing the preciousness no matter what's going on, and just saying yes. And you rest with that. Now, it turns out that we need a little training because our normal way of being is we think that we have what we don't want, like my gimpy knee, and we want what we don't have. Like, I wonder what I'll go online and buy this afternoon to make me happy, and shopping therapy, is like that. And because that we're normally chasing after what we want and running away from what we don't want, we make a lot of mistakes in compassion. We often run away from things that really require our compassion and our kindness. So we need training if we're going to be Buddhas. Well, we are Buddhas if we're going to uncover our Buddha nature, you see? And so that's what the second movement's all about, is the beginning of the training. And the training is, okay, Buddha says, try to visualize yourself differently than you usually see yourself, okay? And then let's get deep into the activities and the qualities of that being. So we engender compassion and we desire to fill that space with these enlightened qualities. And so we meditate on things that represent those qualities. So, like there's green Tara over there, Chenrezi over there. So we'll take Chenrezi because it's the most commonly practiced one. And the instructions for the second movement are to make offerings to the Buddhas. Interesting. So you take all that appears and exists, your whole life, the stuff you like, the stuff you don't like, but it's precious, so you said yes to it, and then you give it away. And as the texts all say, this is interesting, and that pleases the Buddhas. Like Buddhas need your stuff? Why would that please the Buddhas? I mean, that's where you need liner notes. That makes no sense. And I would encourage you, if you get attracted to these practices and you want to do them a lot, like every day. Pick a short one so you really can do it every day. And then do it slowly in English and ask yourself questions like, why would my stuff, my life, please the Buddhas as an offering? Do they need, my stuff? And sometimes we visualize it as, beautiful things like gold and incense and music and all those kinds of things. Well, but still, do they need that stuff? No, they don't need that stuff. But because we're a little bit obscured and have a few obstacles between our perfect openness and generosity of spirit, we need something to help us at this stage of the game. And, being generous actually is a thing humans can do. We can do that with each other and with the Buddhas. And when we do that, our hearts open a little bit, all right? Our hearts open a little bit, and that's what pleases the Buddhas, is that we're coming to them with an open heart. So generosity is for us, not for them. The act of generosity is a gift to me. And that willingness and that openness of heart, that's what's pleasing. And interesting, because I'm open, what opens is a gate. That's another gate. And I call it the gate of blessing. I come from a Judeo-Christian upbringing, so blessings are, blessings. And through that gate of blessing, we imagine just all kinds of goodness flows, every kind of blessing we could ever imagine. And it touches all beings, not just us. We do this for everybody. We start to engender this motivation of being really generous and doing it for all beings, not just ourselves. Waking up for all beings, not just ourselves. And those blessings flow, and everybody can be touched in that moment with what the Bon tradition calls gift waves of blessing. I love that, gift waves. So I imagine gift waves of blessing just washing up on the shores of every life. And then gather back in, and by gathering back in, I become Chenrezig. You see? And it makes sense. And I start to imagine myself as, in the case of the practice we mostly do, like having 4 arms. It's kind of like wild. Or even now and then we do another practice where we imagine we have 1,000 arms because we got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of need in the world. So there's 11 heads, 1,000 arms. Each one has an eye in it so that it could see every individual being and be able to help in the right way at the right time for the right person and remove suffering, which is what compassion is. So this idea of making an offering, receiving a blessing that's transformative for us is really an important part of these imagination practices. Back in 2004 and 2005, I was going through a particularly difficult time in my life. I mean, my whole identity started to crumble away to nothing because I'd wrapped my identity up in being a good provider and I'd wrap my identity up in, just having the economic freedom to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And let's just say life falls apart sometimes. And it was bad. I mean, it fell apart in part because of me, of course, but it also fell apart because there was somebody who just basically stole everything I'd ever created or built. And I had less than nothing because he hadn't been paying me for a while. So I was living out of my savings, and I did all the bad things that a smart financial person wouldn't do. And I'm an investment advisor. And so this crushed everything. Even my self-image as a smart advisor crushed to bits. And that's when I realized I had to take these practices seriously and start thinking about them. And what I learned was that if I could imagine myself as Chenrezig every day, it would wear away on this part of myself that felt like it had been shattered. That was my perception. Why was it my perception? Well, I had a lot of stuff I didn't want all of a sudden, and I didn't have a lot of stuff I did want all of a sudden, and I thought, and my identity was wrapped up in all that, having what I wanted and avoiding what I didn't want. Well, guess what? Life dealt me a severe blow. And that's when I started to change the way I practiced. And there were particular prayers and practices that meant a lot to me. And the important thing is that if you scout around, you'll find ones that actually resonate with you. And so I encourage you to be curious and scout around and try some different things and see what you want to really commit yourself to, where you see a real path and a real benefit. So anyway, long story short, I started doing a morning practice, a daily practice. And I started thinking about what my predicament is, the overture. And I started thinking about what the first movement is, the fact that I have allies, that I have somebody to call on. I have resources within me, and I have resources all around me, both seen and unseen. And it's one thing to know that, and it's another thing to do that. It is. It doesn't help. It's helpful to know stuff, but it doesn't help the way you need help when you're in really deep doo-doo. You need to be able to do some stuff, right? And so think of practice that way. Think of Dharma practice as a refuge that you go to for real, because we all have difficulties. That's just part of being alive as a human. And when you can change the atmosphere in yourself, guess what? Everything around you changes too. There's an old Zen story that just talks about two men visited a Zen master. And the first man says, "I'm thinking of moving to this town. What's it like?" And the Zen master asks, "What's your old town like?" And the first man responds, "It was dreadful. Everyone was hateful. I hated it." And the Zen master says, "This town is very much the same. I don't think you should move here." The first man leaves, and the second man comes in, and the second man says, "I'm thinking of moving to this town. What's it like?" The Zen master asks, "What was your old town like?" And the second man responds, "It was wonderful. Everyone was friendly, and I was happy. Just interested in a change now. And the Zen master says, this town is very much the same. I think you'll like it here. When the Buddha said, with our minds we create the world, he wasn't kidding around. That is really true. So, if you can consider your predicament and not run away from it, lean into it, whatever it is. Lean into it. Don't say no to it, even if it's bad. Say yes to it. Be open. And then through that openness, engender the qualities of a bodhisattva, somebody on the path to Buddhahood. What are those qualities? Well, it's interesting. So you can, there are different formulations, but the most common one is called the 6 perfections. And the first one is generosity. How about that? Because it opens your heart. And the second one is ethics. Because when you're in extremity, the temptation is to do something just to get out of it, even if it may not be good for you or others. You might try some stuff, right? So you engender ethics, and you just can use your imagination when you're thinking, I'm becoming Chenrezi. Think of yourself as an open being, like clear, like light, like rainbow light, without any solidity. You're just an open space, like a rainbow. And you're going to fill that space with generosity, feelings of generosity. Fill yourself with feelings of ethics and wanting to be ethical. The third one is patience. Patience is the antidote for anger, which is really interesting. When you're in extremity and when things aren't going the way you want, we get angry. And what the Buddha said is, yeah, that's what your natural inclination is. And believe me, I get angry all the time. The question is, how do you work with it, right? And the first wise way of working with patience with anger is patience. So you just kind of engender that and imagine that a wave of the air of patience is passing through the light of your being. And then the next one is joyful diligence, which means that, you know how when we just stew, even if we're like having a good time, but we're just vegging out, it's like kind of unsatisfactory. I'm talking for myself. Maybe other people are different than that. But it's like, don't settle for that. And certainly if we're angry, we like to stew on it. You know, boy, don't we? Well, joyful diligence tells us, no, engender a different quality of that. Realize that you can do something and do it with joy, because you can do it and it's going in the right direction. And you're being helped by all kinds of allies. So what does that mean? Well, for me in 2005, when the world was falling apart and I felt literally suicidal. I mean, my identity was getting smashed, so it kind of was a death in a way. I could just say no to that. I could be angry at that. I could grab an identity out of that. And, I mean, there's all kinds of psychology that tells you to do that. But there's something else the Dharma tells us. And the recommendation is compassion. So what are we diligent in? We're diligent in compassion. Well, how do we do that? Have you all heard of the practice called Tonglen? Yeah? compassion practice where we take whatever is happening, and if we've labeled it as bad, okay, well, I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of humans on this planet and a lot of animals and insects and fish and birds besides, and they're all struggling too. We all run into stuff. So you say something to yourself, a little prayer, like Chenrezig might say, or Jesus might say, or the Dalai Lama might say, or a lot of beings have been doing this, and it's all the same prayer. May my anger, may my hurt, may my anxiety, may my fear contain all the negative emotions, whichever one it is that you're aware of in yourself, of all beings, and may we one day be free of it and work towards insight so we don't create the conditions for this to arise again. Ooh, so now we've said yes even to something that hurts, because we can use it to engender compassion. And when you do that, I don't know if you can feel that in yourself right now, it brings a certain luminosity to this open space that we've created by imagining ourselves that way. And so now there's a brightness and a warmth, and that's what we're diligent about, is cultivating that brightness and warmth and benefit for beings. Well, how can we pull this off, really? Because our minds are like crazy, especially when they're hurting, they're crazy. And, well, the way we pull that off is with mindful awareness, and that's the fifth of the qualities. And we have to train in that. Mindful awareness is trained through doing our shamatha practice. Period, end of story, you know. Lama Yeshe Jamso used to say that shamatha is not sufficient to achieve enlightenment. However, you can't wake up until you calm down. And so we got to calm down and practice that every day, even if it's for a couple of minutes. Once you're familiar with it, you don't have to spend long with it, just touch and go. You can touch and go with shamatha all day long. I do. I mean, it's one of my great allies. So, mindful awareness is what helps us to keep coming back to a yes response, a compassionate response to whatever's coming up for us. Okay. And then the last one is wisdom. And wisdom, insight, arises with these qualities. When we engender these qualities, boom, there it is. And it's not something that you can actually define. You can point at it. And what you are pointing at, if you're pointing at wisdom, is you're pointing at what Thich Nhat Hanh called the inner being of everything. It's like he would say, if you look at this paper, do you see a cloud? Well, if you don't see a cloud, then you're not seeing yet. Because without a cloud, there won't be rain. Without a rain, trees won't grow. Without trees, there's no paper. And so on, and so on, and so on. Nothing appears on its own. Nothing. Everything arises with causes and conditions, which is why we're practicing and we're engendering these incredible enlightened qualities. It's not in order to create a magic spell under which everything gets better. We're creating a direct experience in ourselves that's transformative so that we're living out of that kind of reality. It moves from our curiosity and our imagination into our direct experience if we exercise it. And that's the key. It's all there. Buddha told us it's all there. We all have the same nature that he has, enlightened nature. It's all there, but we haven't developed those muscles yet. We've developed strong muscles for attraction and avoidance and ignorance of inner being, which are the three poisons, right? But we haven't done a lot with compassion and kindness and joy and peace yet. So what we're doing here is we're taking a practice session and we're starting to develop the muscles that can bring us to enlightenment. So, obviously, we're not through the whole symphony yet, and I knew that would happen. But kindness and compassion is a pretty good place to close this talk off with. So let's do that. I will say something here that I'll repeat each time until I finish all of this. And it might take 3 times, I don't know. But I'll try to make it so that each thing stands alone. You don't necessarily have to be here for all 3 or something. I'm not trying to hook you. So the takeaway, at the end of Chenrezig practice, for instance, you do the whole practice, you're already through the grand finale, and you just rest. You let everything dissolve. All the concepts of yourself dissolve. All your concepts of Chenrezig dissolve. The whole practice dissolves. The mantras dissolve. Everything. And everything is vast openness. It doesn't take long before our thoughts begin to arise, and they could be thoughts about anything like, I think I'll make a Caesar salad for dinner tonight. See, you could have like some kind of thought like that. Okay. Or you could have some thought like, I just love Dharma practice. Well, whatever. Or, this is really boring and I'm making no progress. Whatever. It doesn't matter what the thought is. And, all of those thoughts are just thoughts. And because we know shamatha, we know they're just thoughts. We can let them go. There's like clouds in the sky. And the instructions in the practice are that after dissolution with the first thought, whatever it is, change the thought. It's interesting. We have the power to change thought. So you say, instead of thinking of Caesar salad, think, I am Chenrezig. That's how the practice ends. You dissolve it, and then you re-arise as whoever you are, thinking whatever you think, and you change it to I am Chenrezig. You re-engender those qualities and that openness and that luminosity, right? And so the takeaway is this. Always remember that where you are is a result of who you were. But where you go depends entirely on who you choose to be from this moment on. That's the reason the wise ones who wrote that practice, the brilliant ones, ended it that way. Choose to be Chenrezig. That's what they're saying. I just want to break it down a little bit. I had some curiosity once upon a time. So why do they say that? What, am I supposed to go out and get a jacket with 4 armholes in it? I don't know. Well, whatever. What's going on here? No, that's not what they're saying. And then, there's always at the end a dedication of merit. So we'll do the dedication that's on the sheet, but not yet. I want to read you the dedication off of a Chenrezig practice that isn't the one that we do, but it's lovely. And it gives you an idea of why we practice in the morning. It kind of reiterates this idea of walking through life as qualities, of noble qualities. So here it is. This was written by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was a great Gelugpa monk. He said, "Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Chenrezig, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Due to the positive potentials accumulated by myself and others in the past, present, and future, may anyone who merely sees, hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me be freed in that very instant from all sufferings and abide in happiness forever. In all rebirths, may I and all sentient beings be born in a good family, have clear wisdom and great compassion, be free of pride, and devoted to our teachers. In whatever guise you appear, O Chenrezig, whatever your retinue, your lifespan, and pure land, whatever your name, most noble and holy, may I and all others attain only these. By the force of these praises and requests made to you, may all disease, poverty, fighting, and quarrels be calmed. May the Dharma and all auspiciousness increase throughout the worlds and directions where I and others dwell." And then he gives instructions for daily activities, which I think is important when you have just said, "I'm Chenrezig." He says, when you're doing your daily activities, visualize yourself as Chenrezig. I am Chenrezig. And the environment and the beings around you as Chenrezig. You are Chenrezig, you are Chenrezig, you are Chenrezig. Just thinking that way, how much would the next moment to change for you? Probably a lot. And the environment as Chenrezig's pure land, with many Chenrezigs, like all over the place. Remember, we started with all those Buddhas everywhere? Well, this is kind of like, okay, putting that in your mind again before you get off the cushion. And it says, when you eat or enjoy other sense pleasures, offer them to Chenrezig. When you are praised, see, it's that generosity thing, keeping your heart open. So the whole thing is bookended here. Whenever you are praised, think the other people are praising Chenrezig. So I think that's plenty for the moment. I hope it was helpful. I've talked a pretty long time, and I apologize, there's not a lot of time left. Is there enough time for a couple questions if there are any? I mean, it's all right with me. Okay. So if you have any, please come to the microphone and ask questions. And if there aren't any, that's perfectly fine, and we'll just do the dedication of merit prayer in English. So whatever you like. Or as the title of the talk says, as you like it.
I'm not going to let you get off easy.
You never do.
It's about these bad times.
Yes.
I know that goodness reduces evil. Evil does not reduce evil.
Yeah.
However, we have deadly evil in the world now.
Yep.
So I've been successful, saying, may you have happiness in the cause of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of reduces my anger. But it's not enough.
Right.
So it feeds my anger. And what does a Buddhist do, or what happens to a Buddhist when they fight, kill, self or other?
Yeah, it's really hard times. And I mean, the first thing clearly is to really lean into it and feel your anger, or really feel your disappointment and your fear. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's frightening right now. And rather than try to spiritually bypass them, which is always a temptation, to use a meditation practice or something to get out of the prison that we're in mentally, it's not for that, and it won't create a healthy psychology if you use it that way, which is one of the reasons that having a teacher is helpful, because you can talk. We get trapped. So I'd say one of the things is, seriously, have an interview with a teacher, Lama Kathy, whoever, when you can get one. And because these are very individual, but in general, I would say, when I'm afraid, I don't want to just run away. I want to say, may my fear contain the fear of all beings who are afraid right now. And may we one day be free of it. And then, that's just the prayer part, right? Then there's things like, I mean, I'm not making political anything, but there's a big rally next weekend for No King's Day. And I would encourage people who need to take action to be there. Don't sit on your couch and watch it, or sit and watch it on the internet. Go. Be a part of the community that is saying yes to a different agenda than the one that's being prosecuted right now. So I think part of it is being proactive. It's one of the reasons that these Vajrayana practices are sort of good, because there's doing involved in them. And we have this sense of being proactive and taking steps on the path, right? So there's that. I have a thing about homelessness and how it shouldn't exist, or hunger, or how it shouldn't exist. And even though we are followers of a strict vegetarian, there's homeless people out on the street that need good quality protein. And I carry literally Wagyu beef sticks, the best beef sticks you can buy, so that when somebody is there at the exit ramp of a freeway, I can roll down my window and I can give them some food. I still have all kinds of feels about homelessness and hunger. But at least at the end of the day, I can do something, what little I can do. And I've made positive contact with a person in need, and I've been able to give them something they need, plus say a prayer, at least in my own heart for them. Say a mantra, the compassion mantra or whatever. Who knows what will ultimately help enough? I don't know. So it's not a matter of outcomes or being effective. It's a matter of finding a way to be proactive in a direction that engenders enlightened qualities. And geez, it's a contact sport. I mean, it's real deal. And you'll sometimes feel like you hit the mark and sometimes you didn't, but that's how we learn and grow. So that's my thing is that we just don't back away or use spiritual practice to try to hide from things. Don't do that. But use it to figure out how to turn something, even if it's just a molecule of it, around a little bit. Other than that, I think it's, you know it when you're around somebody who is full of love and compassion. You know it, you can feel it. And some people, you can feel it really strongly. I mean, I will never forget just how many people, when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche used to come to Columbus, they would get in, we'd get an interview. You get an interview with them, one-on-one time with Rinpoche. And this happened to me more than once. You go in there and it would feel overwhelming, and I just burst into tears. The whole interview was me crying. Not because he said anything mean, it was because I was overwhelmed with this sense of kindness and compassion that just cut through everything. And it was a feeling, it wasn't words. It wasn't a magical prayer or a magical practice, except that it was because he did his practice. And he engendered those qualities, and those qualities liberated me. Well, we can do that for each other. But it requires having the daily practice, frankly. These guys, I mean, like the Dalai Lama, he's like that too. I got to meet him one time. He's just like that. He gets up at 4 in the morning and does 4 hours of practice. The Dalai Lama, before he ever does another thing. I don't do that. Maybe someday I will. But I can have a daily practice, and I do. And I think it helps, and when I show up sometimes, people do calm down. I've had people tell me that. And that's what you do. You work on yourself. So it's those two things. You got to work on yourself to the point, and you find a way to be proactive a little bit, so that you don't spiritually bypass. The other thing, there's a psalm in Hebrew. It starts, Shaviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, which means I place God before me always. What does that mean? Well, that means I'm leaning in, not pulling back. It's like the divine, the Buddha nature, the spirit is there. So lean in, figure out how to do that. That's the thing. And we all have to figure that out for ourselves. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Eric. You are lovable.
I'm gullible? Yes.
And I'm leaning into it.
Okay, good.
I just want to say thanks. I
Thanks,
really
Chuck.
enjoyed that analogy to a symphony and the way you talked about the stages of practice. I really enjoyed that. And as I understand it, it's going to be the Eric channel for a few more talks coming up, right?
Well, for the next one, but not the one following that.
Okay, so next week Eric's coming back.
I'll be
saying,
back.
yeah. The other
Phase 2 of lumpy gravy, as Frank Zappa used to say.
Okay. The other thing, Josh in the store, this is an aside, but Josh in the store asked me to ask anyone if they found glasses. He lost a pair of glasses. He said kind of a clear gray rim. So he's worried that somebody maybe while shopping in the store, grabbed them inadvertently. So we've looked everywhere, but Josh asked me to ask for if anybody comes across something they might have picked up accidentally to let us know. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
So let's just say the dedication of merit in English, because I've certainly gone past my time. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. See, everything I said is in there. We just said it, right? We named the bodhisattvas that we may follow in their path. You know, that's, yeah. We pray for it, we just got to do it. That's it. Thank you, everybody.